This is the story of Prophet Elijah, the greatest prophet of Israel. Long ago, in a land called Israel, there lived a man named Elijah. He was not like other men. God had chosen him to be a prophet. A prophet is someone who speaks God's words to people. Elijah was brave and strong in his heart, but he was also just a man who felt scared sometimes. In those days, Israel had a king named Ahab. King Ahab was not a good king. He did not love God. Instead, he worshipped false gods made of stone and wood. His wife was Queen Jezebel. She was very mean and hated God's prophets. She wanted to kill all of them. The people of Israel were confused. They did not know if they should follow God or the false gods. They saw their king and queen worshipping Baal, a fake god that could not hear or help them. Many people started to forget about the real God who made heaven and earth. God saw this and was very sad. His people were turning away from him. So God called Elijah to go and speak to King Ahab. This was scary for Elijah because King Ahab was powerful and could hurt him. But Elijah loved God and wanted to obey him. One day, Elijah walked to the palace where King Ahab lived. His sandals made soft sounds on the stone floor as he walked through the big doors. The guards looked at him with worried eyes. They knew Elijah was a prophet of God. King Ahab sat on his golden throne, wearing his royal robes and crown. Elijah stood before the king and spoke with a strong voice. "King Ahab, you have made God very angry. You have stopped following God and started worshipping Baal. Because of this, God says there will be no rain in Israel. No dew will fall on the ground. The sky will be like hot metal. This will happen until I say the rain can come back." King Ahab's face became red with anger. His hands gripped the arms of his throne. How dare the simple man tell him, the king, that there would be no rain? But Elijah was not afraid. He had spoken God's words, and God's words always come true. Just as Elijah said, the rain stopped. Day after day, the sun burned hot in the sky. No clouds appeared. The rivers began to dry up. The grass turned brown and died. The animals became thirsty. The people worried about their crops and their water. After Elijah spoke to the king, God told him to hide. "Go to a place called Korath Brook," God said. "You can drink water from the brook, and I will tell ravens to bring you food." Ravens are big black birds that usually eat dead things. But God can make anything happen. Elijah obeyed God and went to the lonely place by the brook. Every morning and every evening, the ravens came flying to him. In their beaks, they carried bread and meat for Elijah to eat. It was a miracle. The birds fed the prophet just like God promised. Elijah drank the cool water from the brook and ate the food the ravens brought. But after many months without rain, even the brook began to dry up. The water got lower and lower each day. Soon there would be no water left for Elijah to drink. What would happen to him? God spoke to Elijah again. "Get up and go to a town called Zarephath. I have told a widow woman there to take care of you." A widow is a woman whose husband has died. Often widows were very poor because they had no one to take care of them. Elijah walked for many days to reach Zarephath. The sun was hot, and his feet hurt from walking on the dusty roads. When he got to the town, he saw a woman picking up sticks near the gate. She looked thin and sad. Her clothes were old and worn. This must be the widow God told him about. "Please give me a little water to drink," Elijah asked the woman. His throat was dry from the long walk. The woman looked at him with kind eyes. "I will get you some water," she said, and started to go get it. "Wait," Elijah called. "Please also bring me a piece of bread." The woman stopped walking. Her face became very sad. "I promise you, as surely as your God lives, I do not have any bread. I only have a handful of flour in a jar and a little oil in a jug. I am gathering these sticks to make a fire. I will make one last meal for my son and me. After we eat it, we will die because there is no more food." Elijah's heart felt sorry for the woman, but he knew God had a plan. "Do not be afraid," he said with a gentle voice. "Go and make your bread like you planned. But first, make a small loaf for me and bring it to me. Then make something for you and your son. This is what the God of Israel says. The jar of flour will not become empty. and the jug of oil will not run dry until the day God sends rain on the earth." The woman looked at Elijah for a long moment. She was thinking hard. Should she trust this stranger? She only had enough food for one last meal. If she gave it to him, she and her son might die. But something in Elijah's eyes made her believe his words were true. The woman went to her house and did exactly what Elijah said. She made a small loaf of bread and brought it to him. Then she went back and made food for herself and her son. When she looked in the flour jar, it was still full. When she checked the oil jug, there was still oil in it. Day after day, the woman made food for Elijah, her son, and herself. Every day the flour jar stayed full, and the oil jug never became empty. It was another miracle from God. Even during the terrible time with no rain, God took care of his prophet and the kind woman who helped him. Elijah lived with the widow and her son for many months. They became like family to him. The boy was happy and played around the house. His mother smiled more now that she did not worry about food. Everything seemed peaceful. But one day something terrible happened. The woman's son became very sick. His sickness got worse and worse until he stopped breathing. The boy was dead. The woman cried and cried. She held her son in her arms and looked at Elijah with angry, sad eyes. "What have you done to me, man of God?" she cried. "Did you come here to remind God of my sins and kill my son?" Elijah felt his heart break seeing the woman's pain. He gently took the boy from her arms. "Give me your son," he said softly. He carried the boy upstairs to his own room and laid him on his bed. Elijah knelt down beside the bed and prayed to God with all his heart. "O Lord, my God, have you brought tragedy even to this widow who has been so kind to me? Why did you let her son die?" Tears rolled down Elijah's face as he prayed. Then Elijah stretched himself out on top of the boy 3 times and prayed again. "Lord my God, please let this boy's life return to him." God heard Elijah's prayer. Suddenly, the boy's eyes opened. He began to breathe again. His cheeks became pink with life. The boy was alive. Elijah picked up the boy and carried him downstairs to his mother. "Look," Elijah said with joy in his voice. "Your son is alive." The woman took her son in her arms and hugged him tight. She could hardly believe what she was seeing. Her son was really alive. She looked at Elijah with tears of happiness in her eyes. "Now I know that you are truly a man of God," she said. "The words you speak from God are true." Meanwhile, in the rest of Israel, things were getting very bad. For 3 years, no rain had fallen. The ground was hard and cracked like broken pottery. Plants died. Animals died. Wells dried up. People were hungry and thirsty. Even King Ahab was worried. King Ahab blamed Elijah for all the problems. He sent soldiers everywhere to look for the prophet. He wanted to catch Elijah and punish him. But God kept Elijah safe and hidden. After 3 years, God spoke to Elijah again. "Go and show yourself to King Ahab. I am going to send rain on the earth." It was time for the great test that would show everyone who the real God was. Elijah left the widow's house and began walking toward King Ahab's palace. On the way, he met a man named Obadiah. Obadiah worked for King Ahab, but secretly he loved God. He had even hidden 100 of God's prophets in caves to keep them safe from mean Queen Jezebel. When Obadiah saw Elijah, he fell on his face on the ground. "Is it really you, my master Elijah?" he asked. "Yes, it is me," Elijah said. "Go and tell King Ahab that I am here." Obadiah was scared. "If I tell the king you are here, and then you disappear again, he will kill me. He has been looking everywhere for you." But Elijah promised, "I will not hide anymore. I will show myself to King Ahab today." So Obadiah went and told King Ahab that Elijah was back. King Ahab quickly went to meet the prophet. When the king saw Elijah, his face became angry and red. "Is that you, you troublemaker of Israel?" King Ahab shouted. Elijah stood tall and looked right at the king. "I have not made trouble for Israel," he said with a strong voice. "You have. You and your father's family have made trouble by not obeying God's commands. You worship the false god Baal instead of the real God." Then Elijah told King Ahab what to do. Now gather all the people of Israel to meet me on Mount Carmel. Also bring the 450 prophets of Baal and the 400 prophets of Asherah who eat at Queen Jezebel's table. Mount Carmel was a tall mountain with a flat top, perfect for all the people to see what would happen. King Ahab did what Elijah said. He sent messages all over Israel telling the people to come to Mount Carmel. He also brought all the false prophets. On the day of the great test, thousands of people climbed up Mount Carmel. They spread out across the top of the mountain like a sea of faces. Children held their parents' hands. Old people leaned on walking sticks. Everyone was excited and nervous. They had heard about the contest between Elijah and the prophets of Baal. Elijah stood alone on one side. On the other side stood 450 prophets of Baal. They wore fancy robes and carried sharp knives. They looked confident and proud. But Elijah, just one man, seemed calm and sure. Elijah raised his voice so all the people could hear him. "How long will you keep changing your minds?" he called out. "If the Lord is God, follow him. But if Baal is God, then follow him." The people said nothing. They just stared at Elijah. They were confused and did not know what to think. Then Elijah explained the test. "I am the only prophet of the Lord left here, but Baal has 450 prophets. Let them bring 2 bulls for sacrifices. Let them choose one bull and cut it into pieces and put it on wood, but not light the fire. I will prepare the other bull the same way but not light the fire either. Then you call on the name of your God, and I will call on the name of the Lord. The God who answers by sending fire is the real God." All the people thought this was a good test. "Yes," they shouted. "That is a good idea." The prophets of Baal went first. They chose their bull and killed it and cut it up and put the pieces on wood stacked high like an altar. Then they began to call out to their fake god. "O Baal, answer us," they shouted. They danced around their altar from morning until noon. They jumped up and down and waved their arms. They sang loudly and made lots of noise. But nothing happened. No fire came down. Baal did not answer because Baal was not real. At noon, Elijah began to make fun of them. "Shout louder," he said. "Maybe your God is thinking about something else, or maybe he is busy, or maybe he is traveling somewhere. Or maybe he is sleeping and you need to wake him up." This made the prophets of Baal very angry. They shouted even louder. They began to cut themselves with knives and swords until blood ran down their bodies. They thought this would make their God listen to them. They kept this up all afternoon until evening. But still nothing happened. No voice answered them. No fire came down. No one paid attention to them. Finally, when the prophets of Baal were tired and bloody and defeated, Elijah said to all the people, "Come here to me." All the people came closer to watch what Elijah would do. First, Elijah repaired the altar of the Lord that had been broken down. He took 12 stones, one for each of the 12 tribes of Israel. He used these stones to build an altar in the name of the Lord. Then he dug a ditch around the altar, big enough to hold 2 measures of seed. Elijah arranged the wood on the altar. Then he cut the bull into pieces and laid the meat on the wood. Everything was ready for the fire to come down. But then Elijah did something that surprised everyone. "Fill 4 large jars with water," he said. "Pour the water on the meat and on the wood." The people did what he said. Water ran all over the sacrifice and the wood and dripped down onto the ground. "Do it again," Elijah said. So they poured 4 more jars of water on everything. "Do it a 3rd time," Elijah commanded. They poured 4 more jars of water on the altar. Now everything was soaking wet. Water filled the ditch around the altar. The wood was so wet it could never catch fire by itself. This made the test even more amazing. When everything was ready, Elijah stepped forward to pray. The time was about when the evening sacrifice was usually offered in the temple. All the people became very quiet. Even the wind seemed to stop blowing. Everyone watched Elijah. Elijah raised his hands toward heaven and prayed in a loud, clear voice that everyone could hear. "Lord, the God of Abraham, Isaac, and Israel, let it be known today that you are God in Israel and that I am your servant and have done all these things at your command. Answer me, Lord, answer me." So these people will know that you, Lord, are God, and that you are turning their hearts back again." Elijah's prayer was simple but powerful. He did not dance or shout or cut himself like the prophets of Baal had done. He just talked to God like God was right there listening to him. Suddenly, fire came down from heaven. It was not like any normal fire. This fire was bright and hot and powerful. It burned up the sacrifice and the wood and the stones and the soil. It even dried up all the water in the ditch. The fire consumed everything completely. When all the people saw this, they fell on their faces on the ground. They were amazed and scared and excited all at the same time. "The Lord, He is God!" they shouted. "The Lord, He is God!" Now everyone knew who the real God was. It was not Baal. It was the Lord, the God of Israel, the God who made heaven and earth. Then Elijah commanded the people, "Seize the prophets of Baal. Do not let any of them escape." The people grabbed all the false prophets. Elijah took them down to a valley and put them to death there, because they had led Israel away from God. After this great victory, Elijah said to King Ahab, "Go, eat and drink, because there is the sound of a heavy rain coming." Even though the sky was still clear and blue, Elijah could hear in his spirit that rain was coming. King Ahab went to eat and drink, but Elijah climbed to the top of Mount Carmel. He bent down and put his face between his knees and prayed for rain. He sent his servant to look toward the sea 7 times. The first 6 times, the servant came back and said, "There is nothing there." But the 7th time, the servant said, "I see a cloud as small as a man's hand rising from the sea." Elijah told his servant, "Go and tell King Ahab to get his chariot ready and go down quickly before the rain stops him." Soon the sky became black with clouds. The wind began to blow hard. Heavy rain began to fall. It was the first rain in 3.5 years. King Ahab rode in his chariot toward his palace in a city called Jezreel. But something amazing happened. God gave Elijah special strength and speed. Elijah tucked his robe into his belt and ran ahead of King Ahab's chariot all the way to Jezreel. Even though the king had horses pulling his chariot, Elijah ran faster. It was another miracle from God. The people were so happy to see rain again. They danced in the streets and opened their mouths to catch the raindrops. The dry ground drank up the water like a thirsty person drinks cool water. Plants would grow again. Animals would have water to drink. The terrible drought was over. But Queen Jezebel was very angry when she heard what had happened on Mount Carmel. She was furious that Elijah had killed her prophets of Baal. She sent a message to Elijah that said, "May the gods punish me if by this time tomorrow I do not kill you just like you killed my prophets." When Elijah got this message, he became very afraid. Even though he had just seen God do amazing miracles, he was still just a man who could feel scared. He ran away to save his life. He traveled south to a place called Beersheba and left his servant there. Then he went alone into the desert. Elijah walked for a whole day into the wilderness. He was tired and sad and scared. He sat down under a small tree and prayed to God. But this time his prayer was very different. "I have had enough, Lord," he said. "Take my life. I am no better than my fathers who died before me." Elijah felt so tired and discouraged that he lay down under the tree and fell asleep. He felt like giving up. Even great prophets sometimes feel sad and want to quit. While Elijah was sleeping, an angel touched him and said, "Get up and eat." Elijah looked around and saw bread baked over hot coals and a jar of water beside his head. He ate and drank and then lay down again and went back to sleep. The angel of the Lord came back a second time and touched him and said, "Get up and eat, because the journey ahead of you is too far for you to make without food." So Elijah got up and ate and drank. The food that God gave him was so good and gave him so much strength that he was able to travel for 40 days and 40 nights without eating again. He walked all the way to a mountain called Horeb, which was also called the Mountain of God. This was the same mountain where Moses had received the 10 Commandments many years before. When Elijah reached the mountain, he found a cave and spent the night there. While he was in the cave, God spoke to him. "What are you doing here, Elijah?" Elijah told God how he felt. "I have been very eager to serve you, Lord God Almighty. The people of Israel have broken their agreement with you. They have torn down your altars and killed your prophets with swords. I am the only one left, and now they are trying to kill me too." God told Elijah to go out and stand on the mountain because he was going to pass by. Then something amazing happened. First, a powerful wind came that tore the mountains apart and broke rocks into pieces. The wind was so strong it could have knocked down trees and houses. But God was not in the wind. After the wind, there was an earthquake that made the whole mountain shake and tremble. Rocks fell and the ground moved back and forth. But God was not in the earthquake. After the earthquake, there was a fire that burned bright and hot. The flames reached high into the sky. But God was not in the fire either. After the fire, there was a gentle whisper, so quiet and soft that Elijah had to listen very carefully to hear it. And God was in the gentle whisper. When Elijah heard the whisper, he wrapped his face in his cloak and went out and stood at the mouth of the cave. Sometimes God speaks in loud, powerful ways like fire from heaven. But sometimes God speaks in a quiet, gentle voice that we can only hear if we listen carefully with our hearts. God asked Elijah again, "What are you doing here, Elijah?" Elijah gave the same answer as before. He still felt alone and discouraged. But God had good news for Elijah. "Go back the way you came," God said. "I have work for you to do. And by the way, you are not alone. I have kept 7,000 people in Israel who have not bowed down to Baal or kissed him. You are not the only one left who loves me." God also told Elijah to find a young man named Elisha and make him a prophet too. Elisha would help Elijah and later take his place. So Elijah left the mountain and went to find Elisha. He found him plowing a field with 12 pairs of oxen. Elisha was working hard, guiding the oxen as they pulled the plow through the dirt to get the field ready for planting. Elijah walked up to Elisha and threw his cloak around the young man's shoulders. This was a sign that Elisha was chosen to be a prophet too. Elisha understood what this meant right away. "Let me kiss my father and mother goodbye," Elisha said, "and then I will come with you." "Go back," Elijah said. "What have I done to you?" This meant that Elisha was free to choose. He did not have to come if he did not want to. But Elisha did want to follow Elijah. He took his pair of oxen and killed them for a sacrifice to God. He used the wood from the plow to make a fire to cook the meat. He gave the meat to the people to eat. This showed that he was leaving his old life behind. Then he set out to follow Elijah and became his helper. For several years, Elijah and Elisha traveled together. Elisha learned how to be a prophet by watching Elijah and listening to him. They became like father and son. During this time, Elijah continued to speak God's words to the people. He was not afraid of King Ahab or Queen Jezebel anymore. When they did wrong things, Elijah told them they were wrong. When they needed to hear from God, Elijah gave them God's message. One time, King Ahab wanted to buy a vineyard that belonged to a man named Naboth. A vineyard is a field where grapes grow. Naboth's vineyard was right next to the king's palace, and King Ahab thought it would be nice to have it for a vegetable garden. King Ahab went to Naboth and said, "Give me your vineyard so I can use it for a vegetable garden, since it is close to my palace. I will give you a better vineyard somewhere else, or if you prefer, I will pay you money for it." But Naboth said no. The vineyard had belonged to his family for many years. It was wrong to sell family land according to God's law. "The Lord forbid that I should give you the land that belonged to my fathers," Naboth said. King Ahab went home angry and sulky. He lay on his bed and turned his face to the wall. He would not eat any food. He acted like a spoiled child who could not get what he wanted. His wife Queen Jezebel came in and asked him, "Why are you so sad? Why won't you eat?" King Ahab told her about Naboth and the vineyard. Queen Jezebel laughed at him. "Is this how you act as king over Israel?" she said. "Get up and eat. Cheer up. I will get Naboth's vineyard for you." Queen Jezebel was very evil and tricky. She wrote letters in King Ahab's name and sealed them with his seal. She sent the letters to the leaders in Naboth's city. The letters said to have a special day and put Naboth in an important place among the people. Then they should get 2 bad men to lie and say that Naboth had cursed God and the king. According to the law, anyone who cursed God should be killed by throwing stones at them. The leaders in the city did exactly what Queen Jezebel's letters said. Even though they knew it was wrong, they had the special day and put Naboth in the place of honor. Then the two bad men lied and said Naboth had cursed God and the king. The people took Naboth outside the city and threw stones at him until he died, even though he had done nothing wrong. Then they sent a message to Queen Jezebel saying, "Naboth has been stoned and is dead." When Queen Jezebel heard this news, she went to King Ahab and said, "Get up and take over Naboth's vineyard that he refused to sell you. Naboth is dead." King Ahab got up and went down to take Naboth's vineyard for himself. He was happy to get what he wanted, but he did not think about the terrible wrong that had been done. But God saw everything that happened. God told Elijah to go and meet King Ahab in Naboth's vineyard. "Give him this message from me," God said. "Have you not murdered a man and seized his property? In the place where dogs licked up Naboth's blood, dogs will lick up your blood too." So Elijah went to the vineyard and found King Ahab there, looking around at his new property. When King Ahab saw Elijah coming, his face turned white with fear. "So you have found me, my enemy," King Ahab said. "I have found you," Elijah replied, "because you have sold yourself to do evil in the eyes of the Lord." Then Elijah gave King Ahab God's message about how he and his family would be punished for the evil they had done. King Ahab was so scared and sorry when he heard this that he tore his clothes and put on rough cloth and fasted and went around sadly. When God saw that King Ahab was truly sorry, God said he would not bring the disaster while Ahab was still alive, but it would come during his son's time. Years passed, and the time came for Elijah to leave this earth. God had decided to take Elijah up to heaven without letting him die first. This was very special. Only one other person, Enoch, had ever been taken to heaven like this. Elijah and Elisha were traveling together, going from one town to another. At each place they stopped, other prophets came to Elisha and asked, "Do you know that the Lord is going to take your master from you today?" "Yes, I know," Elisha would answer. "Do not talk about it." At each town, Elijah said to Elisha, "Stay here. The Lord has sent me to go farther." But each time Elisha said, "As surely as the Lord lives and as you live, I will not leave you." So they traveled together. Finally, they came to the Jordan River. 50 prophets followed them but stopped far away to watch what would happen. Elijah took his cloak and rolled it up and struck the water with it. The water divided to the right and to the left, just like when Moses parted the Red Sea long ago. Elijah and Elisha walked across on dry ground. When they had crossed over, Elijah said to Elisha, "Tell me, what can I do for you before I am taken from you?" Elisha had been thinking about this. "Let me have a double portion of your spirit," he said. He wanted to be able to do God's work even better than Elijah had done it. "You have asked a difficult thing," Elijah said. "Yet if you see me when I am taken from you, it will be yours. If not, it will not be." As they were walking and talking together, suddenly a chariot of fire and horses of fire appeared and separated the two of them. The chariot and horses were bright and shining like the sun. Then a whirlwind came down from heaven and took Elijah up into the sky. Elisha watched as his master and friend went up higher and higher until he could not see him anymore. "My father! My father!" Elisha cried out. "The chariots and horsemen of Israel!" He was sad to see Elijah go, but he was also amazed at the wonderful way God had taken him to heaven. Elisha picked up Elijah's cloak that had fallen from him. Then he went back to the Jordan River. He took the cloak and struck the water just like Elijah had done. "Where now is the Lord, the God of Elijah?" he called out. The water divided again, and Elisha walked across on dry ground. This showed that God's Spirit was now with Elisha too. The 50 prophets who had been watching from far away saw this happen. "The spirit of Elijah is resting on Elisha," they said. They came to meet him and bowed down to the ground in front of him. And so the great prophet Elijah finished his work on earth. He had been brave when everyone else was afraid. He had spoken God's words when it was dangerous to do so. He had shown the people that the Lord was the only true God. He had called down fire from heaven and brought rain after 3 years of drought. He had raised a dead boy back to life. He had been fed by ravens and taken care of by angels. Most importantly, Elijah had always trusted God, even when he felt scared or alone. He learned that God was not just in the big, loud miracles like fire and earthquakes. God was also in the quiet, gentle whisper that spoke to his heart. Through all his adventures, Elijah showed the people that God loves them and wants them to love him back. God is powerful enough to do anything, but he is also gentle and kind. He takes care of those who trust in him, just like he took care of Elijah. The story of Elijah teaches us that God can use anyone to do great things, even when we feel small or afraid. We just need to listen to God's voice and obey what he tells us to do. Like Elijah, we can trust that God will take care of us and help us do what is right. Even though Elijah lived long ago, people still remember him today. They remember his courage and his faith in God. They remember the miracles God did through him. And they remember that no matter how bad things seem, God is always there, ready to help those who call out to him. Elijah's story shows us that the Lord is truly God, the maker of heaven and earth, and there is no other God like him.